Hello and welcome to another episode of 1000 Actually Fun Books, where we are trying to find the best of fun books out there, the best epic stories. And today we're going to do the book The Bangalore Detectives Club by Harini Nagendra. I probably mutilated that, but with the names, you never know. This is a first in a series of murder mystery books taking place in 1920 India. All right, so there are two things about this book. So you have the mystery and you have the historical fiction, and I'm going to treat them separately. So let's talk about the mystery, which is really the plot of the book. The historical fiction is more the setting of the book. So let's talk about the plot. We have a woman who is a higher class, higher caste, I guess, a wealthy wife of a doctor in Bangalore. And they go to a garden club, an exclusive club, and somebody who was not invited was in the garden and he is murdered. And the rest of the story is trying to solve that murder. Sort of. I mean, kind of slow paced, but that's kind of. She is not a detective, so to speak. She's not part of the police. She isn't a known detective or anything like that. She's just burning with curiosity. And for the mystery part of it, one of the things I liked about this is, although she discovers things and comes up with ideas and talks to people that maybe wouldn't talk to the police, everything that she comes up with, she inevitably is like, give that to the police. Let the police pull out the murder weapon from over here that I've discovered. Let the police, know about these clues that I've discovered, that kind of thing. So she discovers things and is, which is awesome, that she's just like, here, police, deal with this. This is your job. You should fingerprint this thing and you should do whatever, okay? So in that respect, I actually really respected her as a detective, because a lot of books kind of skip over that. Like, they will pocket a clue, or they will, damage the crime scene, or lots of things that you're just like, in real life, that shouldn't happen. And the author does a really good job, I think, of handling this, interfering lady detective really well. So that's one of the things I liked about with this mystery. Something that I didn't like, and I'm going to try and do this in such a way that it doesn't spoil the whodunit, but I felt like at the very beginning, when the murder happened, this was not a case of, there are a bazillion suspects and you've got to weed through the, dozen of them and find out what everybody's alibi and their motive and their, that kind of thing. And I'm comparing this to like an Agatha Christie book, where there usually is like a closed number of suspects and you got to, wade through them all. This also wasn't a, completely out of the blue, not even there suspect. I mean, it's somebody that's in the group, but how do I put this? There's a very limited initial pool of potential suspects. And one of them is the one the police are really after, and the other one I felt was a really obvious secondary suspect. And I kept expecting the author to use that as some sort of red herring, and it actually to be something more clever. But it kind of ended up being what I felt, and maybe somebody else will feel differently, but I felt it was pretty obvious who the murderer was. They do a couple of things to try and, divert your attention, but that initial murder, it just seems like there's only one person really it could be, and it was. So I wasn't super impressed with the murder mystery part. I will also say that not only that, but the motive I felt was horrible, because it ended up being this murder suspect, and I'll try to be, again, not to tell you much spoilers, but the motive is just basically insanity. There really isn't a motive. Like, there isn't something like, oh, this person owed somebody money, or they were trying to get power or blackmail. No, this person was insane and just had mood swings and was really had no motive for killing somebody. At least I didn't feel like it. And so I don't like that in a murder mystery. I want it to be clever, and I just didn't feel this murder mystery was clever. Yeah, so overall, the murder mystery is just okay. It wasn't anything to write home about. It wasn't horrible, but it was just okay. Yeah. So I want to switch to the historical fiction part. And unfortunately, I don't have a lot positive on that respect either. Now, there are some good things, like, for example, the food. It was descriptive of Indian food, and there are actually recipes in the back of the book, which is pretty awesome. You could actually try some, I don't know, there are 4 or 5. Recipes back there, which, let me see. A drink, a salt lassi, a salad, sweet corn pomegranate, a main course, spiced rice with lentils, etc. You know, the food aspect of this book, very interesting. And culturally, there were a couple of interesting things about India that I'm like, what? I didn't know that. That's very fascinating. For example, the rich apparently ate off of leaves, and the poor ate off of clay bowls. I'm like, that seems backwards to me, but it was made actually a pretty big deal in parts of the book about how the wealthy looked down on the poor because they couldn't eat off of these fancy leaves, and I just thought that was weird. But okay. However, outside of some cultural details like that, you know, the food, the clothing, a couple of interesting tidbits here and there, it didn't feel like the author researched 1920 India. It basically felt like almost like modern India with perhaps a couple of tidbits, like, you know, they're driving horse and carriage versus, you know, a modern car or a train. They had, disgust for the colonial overlords of Britain that were, you know, the highest of society, I guess. You know, things like that. But it didn't feel like a well-researched historical novel. And there were some things that I, as a complete ignorant of India history, still looked at that and went, that doesn't seem right at all. So, for example, I know there's a caste system in India that's very, very segregated, especially the farther in history you go. And this book kind of deliberately ignores that. And the little bit that's mentioned is kind of disdainful of it. Like, the main character, who is in one of the top caste systems, does not, look down on the lowest caste system, which, very progressive of her, but not very realistic. A woman from the lowest caste system, she, lives in a mud hut and takes care of cows, and she hits her head as an unconscious. And so the rich, wealthy, high caste man, doctor, rushes to her aid and admits her to the hospital. And I'm sitting there going, wait, I thought part of the reason that Mother Teresa is such a big name is because she would go to India and help those in the lowest caste system that the high caste people just will not touch. I mean, ooh, unclean, right? So the fact that this was happening in this book, I'm sitting there going, that doesn't seem historically accurate at all. And it kept doing that over and over and over again. It was written by somebody in India. To me, it felt like the author is from India, and she wanted her historical India to reflect modern India and even be more progressive, perhaps, than modern India. And so she wrote it that way. So it's not a historical film, book. It is a idealized, progressive fantasy history of India. And that irritated me because I wasn't looking for an idealized, progressive India. I was looking for an accurate historical India. And so that makes me question some of the other details about it. Like, is that really the way it is or not? Again, another thing. So they go to a prostitute's house, and there's a sob story about this prostitute that's not very pleasant. But again, a prostitute would be the lowest class caste you could get, right? And they've already made it clear that drinking water from the same well or bucket or whatever from a different caste is pretty taboo. And our progressive modern woman detective is kind of like, I will do so, and leads other women to do so, to share water with this prostitute. And it just felt so inauthentic. I mean, I would have had probably some issues with the reality of 1920 India, but at least I would have felt it was true to history, even if I didn't like that fact. I mean, I don't love the caste system and to feel that other humans are beneath other humans. I mean, I just don't like that. But I don't necessarily love the historical inaccuracies in this book. It irritated me. I was frustrated reading it because I just felt like this is an author who has an agenda that didn't fit reality. The main character is a very progressive woman. In the author's note at the end, she actually says that she had her feminist daughter helping make sure her heroine is appropriately feminist power, women power kind of thing. And it shows. It shows a lot. And I didn't like that because, again, I wanted the authentic history of India, not this made-up fantasy. I mean, it would be almost like if you read a Victorian novel that bills itself as, authentic to the 1800s, and the woman is like, I am gonna wear trousers out in public. And everybody's like, oh, okay, go for it. And then she is supported and applauded for this. And you're like, what? That's not realistic. That's not the way history would, do that. It would be somebody who would end up shunned for doing this culturally obscene act, even if modern people would think it would be just fine. But historically, it's not accurate. Anyway, so I had a problem with that. Yeah. So because I didn't care for the mystery, I thought it was just okay, and I actually didn't like the historical fiction part of this book, I'm gonna put it in my Hall of Disappointments. I was not happy with the way it turned out. I didn't enjoy reading it. The mystery was slow and I felt just not engaging. The historical fiction was frustrating. So overall, I give it a thumbs down. And I'm sorry to say that because I really want to find good historical fiction in other cultures because I think that would be fascinating. But this is not one of them. I would also like to find good mysteries because I have not been successful so far, and this is not one of them. So I have to keep looking. This is not going to end up on my list of 1,000 best books. Instead, it's going to end up in my Hall of Disappointments. So I'm sorry. So on to part 2. My next book. I decided to pick another fantasy romance. So this is Immortal. Kind of see that? Kind of shiny. By Su Lin Tan. And again, this is just like most of the books that I've read. I really don't know much about them other than that they're highly recommended on various places. It seems like this is going to be a enemies to lovers type of fantasy book. I'm not sure which culture. Is this supposed to be Chinese or is this supposed to be Korean? Kind of glance at it. I don't know fast, looking at it super quick, I can't tell. But it's supposed to be, I think, something Asian, because that kind of looks like Asian dress, if you can kind of see. Kimono type look. I don't know. But anyway, yeah. I'm hopeful that that's a good book, because I feel like I just haven't had good books recently. Yeah, so thank you for watching, and I hope you join me on the next one.